The morning of the event dawned bright and clear, the crisp air filled with a sense of purpose. Shaq arrived at the mall early, accompanied by Tasha and a small group of volunteers. They set up a stage in the parking lot, complete with a microphone and speakers. Banners reading "Respect for All" and "Unity in Diversity" fluttered in the breeze. One by one, people began to arrive, families, students, seniors, and even children holding handmade signs. The crowd grew steadily, their collective energy buzzing with excitement and determination. As the event began, Shaq stood off to the side, watching the scene unfold. He saw people from different backgrounds sharing their stories, performing music, and cheering each other on. It was beautiful, and it filled him with a sense of pride he hadn't felt in a long time. But even as he soaked in the positive energy, he couldn't help but notice Richard standing by the entrance of the mall, arms crossed and a sour expression on his face. The climax of the day was approaching. Shaq knew he had to address the crowd, to take the stage and share his truth. But he also knew the weight of this moment wasn't just on him. It was on everyone there, united for a cause that transcended any one person. As he prepared to step up, the tension in the air was palpable, the crowd eager to hear what he had to say. What Shaq didn't know was that Richard had a plan of his own. A plan that could either escalate the situation or bring about an unexpected resolution. Everything was building toward a moment of truth, and no one knew exactly how it would unfold. As Shaq stepped onto the makeshift stage, the crowd went silent, their eyes fixed on him. The energy was electric. People from all walks of life, young and old, had come together to stand with him. His heart beat fast in his chest as he glanced over the sea of faces. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. He took a deep breath, clearing his mind, and stepped forward to the microphone. "Thank you all for being here today." Shaq's voice echoed across the parking lot. "This isn't just about me. It's about every person who has been judged because of how they look, or where they're from, or what they wear. It's about standing up against unfairness, against hate, and saying enough is enough." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers a powerful wave that fueled his words. Shaq continued, his voice growing stronger with every sentence. He spoke about the challenges he'd faced throughout his life, the moments of discrimination, the sting of being misunderstood. He spoke about the importance of community and unity, of lifting each other up instead of tearing one another down. The crowd hung on every word, feeling the weight of his message. As he finished his speech, the applause was deafening. Shaq stepped back from the microphone, his heart swelling with pride. He had done it, he had shared his truth. But he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something unresolved, something hanging in the air. The tension between him and Richard, the mall manager, hadn't dissipated. If anything, it had only grown more intense. Richard was still standing at the entrance, watching everything unfold with a stoic expression. It was then that something unexpected happened. Richard, who had remained silent through most of the event, finally moved. He walked toward the stage, his footsteps deliberate, his face unreadable. The crowd quieted, unsure of what to expect. Was he coming to shut things down? Was he going to escalate the situation further? Richard reached the front of the stage and stood there for a moment, surveying the crowd. Then, to everyone's surprise, he spoke. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice carrying across the still air. "Not just to you, Shaq, but to everyone here. What happened at the mall was wrong. I made a mistake. I misjudged you, and I misjudged what this place should stand for." Shaq looked at Richard, his expression unreadable. He had expected anger, defensiveness, or even more of the same dismissive attitude he had faced before. But instead, Richard was standing there, vulnerable. The apology felt genuine. "I was wrong," Richard repeated, his voice quieter this time. "And I'll make it right. From now on, the mall will be a place where everyone feels welcome. No more discrimination. No more judgment." The crowd was stunned into silence. No one had expected Richard to come forward like this, least of all Shaq. It was a moment of truth, a moment that shifted the dynamic between them from adversaries to potential allies. Shaq nodded slowly, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you," Shaq said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. I respect that." With that, Richard extended his hand. Shaq hesitated for just a moment before shaking it, the crowd watching with bated breath. The handshake wasn't just a gesture. It was a symbol of change, of reconciliation, of a shared understanding that the world needed to be better for everyone, no matter who they were or what they looked like. As the crowd erupted in cheers, Shaq felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The fight he had started wasn't over, but this was a significant victory. He had stood up for himself, and in doing so, he had inspired others to do the same. More importantly, he had shown that change was possible, even in the face of adversity. The event ended with laughter, music, and a sense of unity that filled the air. People gathered to take photos, exchange stories, and celebrate the progress they had made together. Shaq stood off to the side for a moment, watching the scene unfold. It was a bittersweet feeling, knowing that something so simple as a day in the mall had turned into a movement, a turning point in the fight for equality. As Shaq left the mall later that day, he felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and there would still be challenges to face. But he knew that the world was changing, one small step at a time. He had made a difference, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever felt out of place, unnoticed, or unworthy. And in the end, that was what mattered most. The story of that day, the day Big Shaq took a stand, would be remembered for years to come, not because of the conflict, but because of the resolution, the transformation, and the powerful message that rang louder than anything else. Respect for all, no matter what. The morning sun shone brightly over the small, close-knit town where everyone seemed to know each other's name. It was a community that thrived on sharing joys, sorrows, and stories of resilience. But this morning wasn't like the others. The air felt heavier, and the news that had spread overnight left a sense of grief hanging in every corner. People spoke in hushed tones, their expressions marked with a mix of sadness and disbelief. A mother, a pillar of this community, had passed away far too soon, leaving behind a young daughter whose world had just crumbled. Her name was Mia, a bright-eyed, 7-year-old girl whose laughter once echoed through the neighborhood. She was the kind of child who could brighten even the darkest day with her infectious energy. But today, her small frame seemed to carry the weight of an entire world, her wide eyes filled not with mischief, but with questions no child her age should ever have to ask. Her mother, Clara, was her everything. A single parent who had poured her soul into creating a warm, loving life for her daughter despite life's challenges. Clara had been a beacon of kindness, known for her soft smile and the way she made everyone feel seen and valued. The funeral was scheduled for that afternoon. The church, with its tall, ancient steeple, stood solemnly at the edge of town. Its doors were open, welcoming a steady stream of mourners who came to pay their respects. Among them were neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had heard of Clara's passing. The pews filled quickly, a testament to the lives she had touched. At the front of the church, a simple wooden casket was adorned with white lilies, Clara's favorite flower. A framed photograph of her sat beside it, her radiant smile frozen in time. Mia sat in the front row, her tiny hands clutching a teddy bear that had seen better days. It was her comfort, her companion, as she tried to make sense of the overwhelming emotions around her. Beside her was Mrs. Langley, an older woman who had been Clara's closest friend. She kept a protective arm around Mia, whispering words of reassurance that seemed to float away into the quiet hum of the mourners' conversations. Then something extraordinary happened. As the church filled to near capacity, there was a sudden stir at the entrance. A man stepped in, his presence commanding attention. His signature style was unmistakable, rings on his fingers, a hat perched on his head, and an aura of mystery that seemed to follow him wherever he went. It was Johnny Depp. Yes, Johnny Depp, the globally beloved actor known for his eccentric roles and enigmatic personality. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Whispers rippled through the crowd. What was he doing here, in this small town, at this particular funeral? He wasn't known to have any connections to Clara or her family, yet here he was, walking down the aisle with a quiet dignity that silenced even the boldest of murmurs. His expression was solemn, his eyes reflecting a depth of emotion that seemed to mirror the collective grief in the room. Johnny approached the casket, pausing to look at Clara's photograph. He bowed his head for a moment, as if paying his respects to a woman he had never met but somehow understood. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he knelt down in front of Mia. The little girl looked up at him, her tear-streaked face filled with a mixture of curiosity and sadness. Johnny reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, something shiny. He placed it in Mia's hands, a necklace with a delicate pendant shaped like a star. "This belonged to my mother," he said softly, his voice carrying an unexpected gentleness. "She used to tell me that no matter how dark the night gets, there's always a star to guide you home. I think your mom would want you to have it." Mia stared at the necklace, her fingers tracing the star's outline. For a moment, it was as if time stood still. The room, the people, the grief, all seemed to fade into the background. Johnny's gesture, simple yet profound, created a ripple of emotion that touched every heart in the room. But that wasn't all. As the service continued, Johnny remained seated at the back, quietly observing, his presence a silent tribute to the life that had been lost. It wasn't until the service ended that the real surprise unfolded. As people filed out of the church, they noticed Johnny speaking with Mrs. Langley, his expression one of determination. The conversation seemed intense but purposeful, and when it concluded, Mrs. Langley nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Johnny then walked out of the church, his steps deliberate, his face set with a resolve that left everyone wondering. What was he planning? Why had he come all this way to attend the funeral of a woman he didn't know? And what exactly had he promised to do? Mia hesitated for a moment before holding up her drawing. "I'm making a picture for Mommy. Do you think she can see it from heaven?" Johnny smiled, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I think she can, and I think she'd be really proud of you." Over the next few days, Johnny became a quiet but constant presence in Mia's life. He didn't impose or overwhelm. Instead, he listened, encouraged, and offered moments of joy in a time of great sadness. He took Mia to an art supply store and bought her a set of professional paints, brushes, and canvases. "Your mom said you were an artist," he told her. "Let's make sure you have everything you need to keep creating." Word of Johnny's actions spread quickly, and the town was both moved and mystified. Why was he doing so much for this little girl and her family? Some people speculated he was fulfilling a debt to someone from his past. Others thought it might be a way for him to find solace in his own struggles. But the truth was simpler and more profound. He had seen a chance to make a difference and took it without hesitation. As days turned into weeks, Johnny began working on something bigger, a way to ensure Mia's future was secure. He had ideas, plans that involved bringing Clara's story to a wider audience, and using his platform to create lasting change. But not everyone was supportive. Some in the town questioned his motives, and whispers of skepticism began to rise. Could he really deliver on his promises? And what would happen to Mia if he couldn't? The tension grew, leaving everyone anxiously waiting to see how this unexpected story would unfold. As the weeks passed, Johnny's involvement in Mia's life grew deeper, and his plans to secure her future began taking shape. He had quietly reached out to a trusted legal team to set up a fund in Mia's name, ensuring she would have financial support for her education and beyond. He also began collaborating with local organizations to create an art program for children in the town, inspired by Clara's love for creativity and Mia's talent. The initiative was meant not only to honor Clara's memory, but to give back to a community that had shown so much love and resilience in the face of hardship. But not everyone was convinced of Johnny's intentions. A few skeptics in the town voiced their doubts, claiming his actions might be a publicity stunt. The whispers grew louder, fueled by a handful of media outlets that had caught wind of the story. Paparazzi began appearing at the edge of the town, their lenses aimed at every quiet moment Johnny shared with Mia. The intrusion was unwelcome, and the pressure mounted. Johnny, however, remained steadfast. He understood the skepticism, but didn't let it deter him. His focus was on Mia and fulfilling the promise he had made to Clara, even if it wasn't spoken aloud. Mrs. Langley stood firmly by his side, defending him to anyone who questioned his sincerity. "Actions speak louder than words," she would say, and his actions have been nothing but kind. The tension came to a head on a chilly afternoon when Johnny organized a public event at the community center. He wanted to unveil the art program and share his vision for its future. The entire town was invited, but the atmosphere was mixed. Some arrived with curiosity, others with lingering doubts. Mia, holding Johnny's hand tightly, looked up at him with a mixture of trust and nervousness. When the time came for Johnny to speak, he began with heartfelt honesty. He shared how Clara's letter had moved him, how her words had reminded him of the struggles he had faced in his own life, and how he believed that no child should have to face the world alone. He spoke about Mia's talent and her potential, and how Clara's dream for her daughter had inspired him to take action. "I didn't come here to make headlines," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I came here because I believe in the power of kindness, and I believe in Mia. I hope that together we can honor Clara's memory by creating something beautiful, not just for her daughter, but for all the children in this town." His words were met with a long moment of silence, followed by a ripple of applause that grew into a standing ovation. The room was filled with tears, smiles, and a renewed sense of community. Even the skeptics couldn't deny the sincerity in his voice or the tangible impact of his actions. The climax of the story came when Johnny revealed a surprise for Mia. He had commissioned a large mural to be painted on the side of the community center, a tribute to Clara's love for her daughter and her passion for art. The mural depicted Clara and Mia together, surrounded by stars and flowers, their bond immortalized in vivid colors. Mia's face lit up as she saw it for the first time, her small hands covering her mouth in awe. "Do you like it?" Johnny asked gently, kneeling beside her.